Classic films go horribly wrong is brand new at 10:05. First, brand new Carry On, Secrets and Scandals, with scenes of mild nudity.
Relaxing nights in start here. Simba Hybrid Mattress sponsors evenings on Channel 5.
They're the saucy seaside postcard classics that generations have grown up on.
These fabulous cartoon-like characters brought so much joy and warmth and happiness.
They're just funny. There are some great gags in them. There's great slapstick.
It had the most brilliant actors in it. People like Joan Sims and Kenneth Williams, Hattie, Sid and Barbara Windsor, you know.
But behind the scenes of Britain's longest-running film franchise are secret tales of backstabbing and scandal.
It's outrageous when one thinks back now, and I don't know how they could have been allowed to get away with it.
He was badly treated, and he wasn't the only one.
In never-before-seen interviews, we'll reveal the cast's anger at millionaire producer Peter Rogers.
I think it's immoral what they did. I do find a certain amount of resentment within me. Yes, I have to be honest.
I'm not allowed to say that Barbara Windsor told me he was a... am I?
As well as some heartbreaking insight into a secret love.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, he's gone and we didn't talk.
And some complicated friendships.
Joan did say to me, you know, Kenneth Williams is a genius and you have to know which side you're talking to.
We'll go behind the scenes on the film's less-than-glamorous locations.
When lunchtime came, everyone piles back to the studios and you buy your own lunch.
Uncover the bits which should have stayed covered. Reveal all about the films you didn't see.
Can't think why this was never made.
And talk to some of the few iconic cast members who are still very much carrying on.
Poor old sod that I am. Shan't be here for long. Might even go during the interview.
As we reveal the secrets and scandals of Carry On.
Action!
It's 1998. The Good Friday Agreement is signed. The first episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is broadcast. And at Pinewood Studios, some of the most recognisable stars in British cinema gather to celebrate 40 years of Britain's biggest ever film franchise.
Hello.
But behind the scenes, some long-held grievances are being aired. Interviews were recorded for a documentary to mark the occasion, and when we got our hands on the tapes of those interviews, we uncovered some shocking truths about how the stars really felt.
I just think that, you know, we all have had sort of a bit of a bad crack at the whip. I think it's... Yes, I am a bit bitter about it at times.
But what were they so upset about? To understand that, let's go back to 1968 and a damp field behind Pinewood Studios in Ivor Heath.
Now really, let's see those chests come out. And
As we chuckled watching Barbara Windsor's bikini ping gravity-defyingly into Kenneth Williams' face in Carry On Camping, little did we know how much the plucky artistes were suffering for their art.
matron, take them away.
Carry On Camping, filming in October and November 1968. They would always do spring or autumn shoot because all the actors, most of the actors, were in pantomime or summer season. So they're filming a summer holiday film in October, so it was very cold.
We sprayed the grass green because we were treading it down so much, and just to make it look like summer, because, I mean, they were in bikinis, for goodness sake. And, so they were out there spraying the grass.
I think in a lot of carry-ons, and certainly in camping, you can really tell it's been raining and it's cold. You know, you can almost see the goose pimples in everyone's flesh. Everyone looks a bit puckered. It seems completely appropriate, doesn't it, that a carry-on film would be shot on cloudy days in muddy fields.
When the same location was used for Carry On Behind in March 1975, it was cold enough to see the actor's breath.
Oh, nice vans, these. Not bad.
Carol and I were in bikinis, blue, with cold, and they kept painting us with this yellow colour to make our skin look normal.
Phew, it's warm, isn't it? Yes. Phew.
And then it started to snow, and I thought, can't we go in the caravan? And the props guy came over, he said, where are you going? I said, well, I was going to go and get warm. I said, the snow. He said, no, it looks like apple blossom. That's what it looks like on the camera, apple blossom. So just stayed there and looked warm. And that was my baptism of fire into the Carry On film. Oh, God, it was funny. It wasn't funny.
As well as being made off-season, the Carry-Ons were made in very little time and for very little money.
The Carry-Ons were, in terms of shooting time, reminded me very much of my time in Coronation Street. You got there, you did it, boom, boom, that was it. And you did not make mistakes, and you didn't ask what your motivation was. Your motivation was to get it done in one take, if possible. 2 would be outrageous, but just get it done. When you were doing it, the next set was already lit for you to go on to. So that finished, and there was no messing about lighting the set. It was ready to go. You just got on with it, just woof, like that. It was all over.
People did not ever say, could we go for another one? An actress, I do distinctly remember, had said, I'd like to go again. And there was almost like a death silence. And after whatever discussion the director had with the cameraman, we didn't go for another take.
There was no messing around, and if people did start laughing or something, you would be like a schoolmaster and quieten them so they could get on and stick to the schedule. I mean, it was remarkable how those films were made on such a low budget and so often.
Another way to save both time and money was the inventive use of locations, and Pinewood Studios itself provided the locations for everything, from a Spanish beach in Carry On Abroad, shot in a studio car park, to a croquet lawn in India in Carry On Up the Khyber.
And who are we playing today, Major Shorthouse?
Calabar Ravens, Your Excellency.
Oh, top hole.
If we stayed within half a mile of Pinewood Studios, it was not classed as a location. If we go beyond the half a mile, then it was classed as location. And then, of course, we had to get caterers in, transport people, toilets, permissions to use houses, locations, whatever. So it made sense to stay within the half a mile of the studios. And when lunchtime came, everyone piles back to the studios and you buy your own lunch.
Maidenhead Town Hall, a whopping 13 miles away, starred as 3 separate buildings in Carry On Doctor,
I'm he's in a hurry.
Carry On Again Doctor,
They've started early today.
and Carry On Behind. And even the more exotic-looking locations were much closer to home than they appeared.
Come on, let's get out of here.
The Khyber Pass in Up the Khyber was actually North Wales.
Hey, wait for me.
And the Sahara Desert in Follow That Camel was Camber Sands in Sussex. I think lovely Dungeness Power Station is just off to the right there.
Look! The oasis!
Snowdonia in Khyber really works well as the Khyber Pass because it is a mountain and there is snow on it. And I also have to confess, there was a part of me that grew up thinking that the Khyber Pass did have a gate.
The Carry-Ons were box office smashes, despite the shoestring budgets they were made on. And the man in charge of stretching those budgets to their absolute limits was producer Peter Rogers.
Peter Rogers always said it's economic filmmaking. It's not cheap, it's economic.
Yes, he was a tough businessman, but you have to be as a film producer, certainly in those days.
The great thing that I can remember him doing, as soon as he came to observe, it was his immediate thing of checking his watch.
At an event celebrating his career in 2005, Rogers proudly let the audience into some of the secrets of how he kept costs down.
I said, I don't want a large labour force, I only want so many. And I don't want what they call inky lunches, which means the sparks creep back onto the floor and bugger around with the lights and charge overtime or something, which has nothing to do with you. To stop that, we locked the stage doors, actually. Never been done before.
Peter Rogers was notorious for saving money in every possible way he could. Hidden deep in the archives, we even found a letter to a member of the board at Rank Films, complaining about how much the copy room at Pinewood was charging for duplicating scripts. The Carry-Ons were one of the British film industry's biggest successes. But the stars of the films went without many of the perks a film star might usually expect.
The fact of the matter is that Peter Rogers was so tight on the budget that he wouldn't allow the cast to have a car.
Do you know, I was just trying to think today as I came. I thought, how did I get there in the morning? I seem to remember it was very unpleasant. I have a feeling that we picked a bus up somewhere.
And poor old Charlie Hawtrey would catch the bus from Hounslow, where he lived. He'd catch the bus to sort of Uxbridge. And then he would walk from Uxbridge to Pinewood Studios. And one day, a big car, big Rolls, stopped and called out, "Charles, Charles." And it was Laurence Olivier.
He said, "Charles, goodness gracious, where are you off to?" "I'm off to Pinewood, dear boy." And he said, "Well, don't they get you a car?" And he said, "Larry, they don't even give us the bus fare." And so he said, "Well, hop in."
And he said, "You know, Charles, it's a disgrace, you know, it's an absolute disgrace." And, of course, Charles Hawtrey went back to set and told everybody about being picked up by Laurence Olivier and what Laurence Olivier had said, and said it was a disgrace. And then Kenneth Williams sort of archly said, "Oh, so that's why they didn't pick him in the Carry On films."
There were even occasions when trying to save time and money almost cost, well, a lead actress.
When we were filming the bath bit, you could be in there most of the day, you know, you were in and out of it. In mainly.
I wish you'd get out of that bath now and then.
Ah, you're cross. Don't you love your little Cleo?
I love her as much as any man could love any woman who spends half her time up to her neck in ass's milk.
Well, I only bathe 4 times a day.
But at the end of one busy filming day, something had gone wrong with the bath's thermostat.
But what's wrong?
I'll tell you.
I mean, it was like a very hot bath. And they said, "We've got to get this shot in tonight." And I went, "Whoa." "Oh, OK." I said, I'll do it, but, you know, just stand by and I'll rush in, do it, and rush out. And I was all right going down the steps. But, of course, actually, with that amount of water and the pressure, as I got to the bottom 2 steps and it went past my heart, oh, Jesus, I suddenly felt myself going. And one of the prop guys standing by, he got hold of my wig. Luckily, it was clamped to my head and pulled me towards the thing. If I'd gone under, I'd have been a goner.
But with all this money being saved, what happened to the money that got made? Coming up, never-before-seen interviews reveal the cast's outrage over where the Carry On profits went.
Obviously, legally, they have every right to hold on to every penny they made, but nobody knew that the Carry-Ons would be so successful.
And the scandal of the Carry On merchandise.
25 years after Barbara made her last Carry On film, she finds herself emblazoned on a T-shirt like that.
It's Christmas 1981. The Cold War is in full flow. Arthur Scargill is elected president of the National Union of Mine Workers. And a compilation show of Carry On clips is the second most watched programme in the Christmas TV schedules. The Carry On crew must have been thrilled.
One of the brainwaves that Gerald Thomas and Peter Rogers had in the 80s was to compile the films into half-hour compilation programmes for television.
So they would take the old films from, 15, 20 years before, slice them all up into 25-minute chunks and bung them onto ITV and BBC. There were 2 series of compilations at the same time, pretty much.
That meant, obviously, showing old clips of the Carry On films. Great. Royalties for all those you can see in them. But no, they were buyouts. They got a flat fee and that was it. So there were no royalties for anybody. It's quite scandalous.
The Carry On stars' contracts had made no provision for repeats or the existence of TV, which wasn't in itself unusual, but with new versions of their work still making millions for the producers and distributors decades later, unbelievably the cast still didn't see a penny of this money.
And the fact that nobody actually benefited from all the repeats that went on television is outrageous when one thinks back now, and I don't know how they could have been allowed to get away with it.
In never-before-seen interviews, recorded at the time of the 40th anniversary celebration, for the first time we can now reveal the stars' true feelings about their scandalous treatment at the hands of millionaire producer Peter Rogers.
I think it's immoral what they did. They should pay us for those compilations. I don't care about the films, showing them in their entirety on television. I don't mind about that. But the compilations, is wrong. There's a lot of actors who didn't earn a lot of money who could do with those few pennies. And Peter Rogers, I mean, he doesn't need it, for God's sake. Does he?
I mean, I was totally amazed when I did a Middle and Far East tour just before the Gulf War started. And everywhere I went, everybody said how they loved the carry-ons. And I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous, you know, to come to the other side of the world. And yet we get nothing.
The films were everywhere. A colorised version of Carry On Nurse was even playing in reception on the first ever episode of Casualty. And some of the actors found themselves struggling for work because they were too familiar from films they'd made more than a decade previously.
You're in that little pigeonhole of being a carry-on artist. I think that other filmmakers would not ever consider putting you in one of their pictures because, oh, she's a carry-on girl, or, you know, he does the carry-ons. It's sort of a bit of a schneid way of referring to you, when in fact, you know, we hope, all of us, that we're much more versatile.
Barbara Windsor, pre-EastEnders, who was not doing great. You know, she was doing Panto and Summer Season still. She was doing OK, but then she suddenly all over the TV in these films from 15, 20 years ago. And suddenly you're that carry-on girl again. And if you go up for, you know, 12th Night or something, they're going to say, no, you can't be a serious actress because you're in the carry-ons.
It was at one point a big problem because practically once a week you would see me as that young girl. And people used to get phased and say, oh, no. They never gave me a chance. I was never known as the carry-on lady until they did the compilations. But suddenly, I walked down the street and I remember some builder going, hey, carry on, bar. And I'd realised that they'd put them out the worst time they could have possibly put them out, after Coronation Street. So you had this ready-made audience. At 7:30 was Coronation Street, 15 million. And then, 8 o'clock was us.
It wasn't like the cast had been paid much in the first place.
I mean, our salaries never went up in the entire 30 that were made. And I believe the ladies were paid half as much as the men. I don't know for a fact, because I wasn't in the habit of reading or even discussing other people's contracts.
Those contracts, stored deep in the archives, reveal that the male stars, Sid James and Kenneth Williams, would be paid £4,000 or £5,000 per film, whereas Hattie Jakes and Joan Sims were getting £2,500 to £3,000, and often considerably less.
I know for a fact many actors who complained about the fee, which were notoriously bad. There was no argument about it. This was the fee offered, yay or nay. That was it.
It was Peter Butterworth who taught me a big lesson about money and not asking for more. He said, whatever they offer you, just say yes. Because he didn't twice, and he was taken out of a couple of films.
In those days, it used to be Lion's Corner House, where actors would gossip. And when somebody had been lucky enough to do anything connected with a carry-on film, someone would automatically say, well, you won't get rich.
Peter Rogers was well aware of his stingy reputation amongst the cast members and didn't much care, as this painfully honest joke at the 40th anniversary dinner awkwardly demonstrates.
Most important of all, of course, were the artists. I loved them very much and would do anything for them except pay them more money.
Of course, Peter Rogers made an awful lot of money out of the Carry On series. Let's not forget that, because every Carry On film made a fortune, absolute fortune. Carry On Nurse, it started with Carry On Nurse, the second Carry On film, was the biggest selling film of 1959. You know, it made millions of pounds. And the only people who saw that were the distributors, the taxman, and Peter Rogers.
Peter very much liked the best of everything. He had, over his years, 35 Rolls-Royces.
I remember the iniquitous time, I think it was under Wilson's government, when the tax rate, believe it or not, was 98%. That, you think about that, so every pound, you had 2p left. It's a terrifying rate. But you could offset things. And I think Peter was able somehow to offset a Rolls-Royce, which is rather clever.
But it wasn't just the TV rights which were keeping money pouring into Peter Rogers' coffers. Some of the film's iconic moments and images have had a whole separate life of their own.
What are you doing in here? Get out of here!
I'm sorry. If I'd known you were in here, I wouldn't have come, would I?
Yes, all right. Just get out of here quick before somebody comes in.
You haven't got any soap on that bit.
25 years after Barbara made her last Carry On film, she finds herself emblazoned on a T-shirt like that, which you could buy in a clothes store across the country. And she got paid nothing. No repeat fees, no royalties. She felt really unhappy. She told me how unhappy she felt. And it wasn't just her. They had lots of other merchandise with other people on it.
I get all this memorabilia of carry-ons. The camping scene, the shower scene showing the bum, carry-on Dick with looking out of the coach with Sid. Another one where he pulls my bra and I'm like that, you see. I get all these. So there's a big market, and what the hell? I don't know. Where does the money go? I don't know who the money goes to.
So the actors weren't making any money out of the merchandising, but people were. Not just the film distributors, but the producer, Peter Rogers. If you look at the label, Washer's Wool Cycle, Do Not Tumble Dry, Iron on Reverse, the Carry On films were produced by Peter Rogers. That's what it says on the label.
The actors felt so strongly about their treatment, they even tried to mount a legal challenge.
Peter said, it was perfectly legal. You all signed the contracts, you all had agents. We discussed it, your agents, signed the contracts for you. It's all perfectly legal. And Barbara Windsor and a few of the others got together with a solicitor because they wanted to approach Peter about this. And the advice was, this is legal. But was it moral?
I just think it's wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, I always wonder what Sid would have said if he'd have been around, because he was so money-orientated. We did put a few quid together and go to a lawyer, so we didn't stand a chance. We should have known. What a waste of money, really.
Admittedly, it's only morally we tend to think something should be done. Obviously, legally, they have every right to hold on to every penny they made, but nobody knew that the carry-ons would be so successful.
Coming up, the Carry-Ons go into battle with the censors.
What he used to do, he often filmed some extra seriously naughty scenes he knew would never be used.
And when the saucy jokes went too far.
You've got Sid James dressed up as Santa Claus, and you've got Barbara Windsor, who's then in her mid-30s, dressed as a schoolgirl. Just a little bit uncomfortable.
It's 1976. Brits are getting hot under the collar in a sweltering heat wave. And the nation's youth is turning up the heat on the establishment via punk rock.
Wakey, rise and shine!
Thank goodness there's a new Carry On film for some safe, middle-of-the-road family entertainment. Oh, my good grief. Bosoms everywhere.
How dare you come on parade improperly dressed?
We're only obeying orders, Sergeant Major.
The British Board of Film Censors had always understood that boobs and bottoms played a very big part in the Carry-Ons. But this attempt to compete with the full-on titillation of films like the Confessions series was a step too far for both censors and cinema-goers.
Carry On England went out in 1976 with a double A, which in those days meant for 14 years and older.
As the previous films had all received milder U or A certificates, this was an unprecedented moment in Carry On history.
The BBFC classification didn't think that was what people went to see the Carry-Ons for, which is true. I mean, it was a bit of slap and tickle for the dads and a lot of slapstick and silliness for the kids, really.
They recalled the film and they edited it a bit and they took away a lot of the boob coverage, so it was a little bit of a flash and then you didn't see anything more, and it was given an A certificate for general distribution. We need to remember that in the 1960s and 1970s, getting humour through and past the censors was much more difficult than it is today.
In Carry On Camping, I have the lovely little scene with Charlie Hawtrey in the tent.
The tent collapses, and then from out of the tent comes Valerie Leon, and then followed by Charles Hawtrey. Oh, hello.
She was showing me how to stick up my pole. That was far, far too suggestive in those days. And it had to be changed to the pole.
Dobby, what on earth is the meaning of this?
I'm sorry, Mr. Short. The gentleman kept touching things.
Splendid girl, and so helpful. Do you know she's been showing me how to stick the pole up?
More often than not, director Gerald Thomas did manage to slip his rude bits past the censors. Matron. And there's a secret behind that.
What he used to do, he often filmed some extra seriously naughty scenes he knew would never be used. He knew they wouldn't be passed, but he would use them as a bargaining tool for the scenes he actually wanted to use.
For example, in Carry On at the Khyber, you've got Cardew Robinson playing this very incompetent fakir doing all this kind of stuff.
I will now remove the second stool.
Bring on the dancing girls. Get rid of this idiot.
Fakir, off.
They had to ensure that the gap between fakir and off was wide enough that it didn't offend the censors. But Peter was even cleverer than that. Gerald filmed another sequence, the identical one, where Bernard Breslau says, "Oh, he's just a..." Knowing full well that in 1968 you weren't going to get that one passed. They said, well, the other one's all right. They went, yeah, OK, you can have the fakir off one instead.
When Carry On Teacher was filmed back in 1959, the suggestive name of Joan Sims' character alarmed the censors. Speaking in 1998, Leslie Phillips hilariously recounted how he thwarted their efforts to tone down all cock, simply by being Leslie Phillips.
Because he had an idea, you'd say, oh, cock, or something like that, you see. So I flattened it. I'd flattened it, as you probably remember. I just went, oh, cock. And the flatter I did, the filthier it got.
Who's that? Miss Alcock. Miss Alcock.
A suavely smutty effort there from Leslie Phillips. I bet you wouldn't catch that nice Joan Sims craftily making innocent words sound dirty.
I have this scene with Charlie Hawtrey, and I have to say, my brother, the Count. But I didn't say anything untoward. But, of course, it is the way that you play it. I mean, if you just say, my brother, the Count, it doesn't mean anything, but probably because it looked as if I was spitting in the gutter and doing a quick aside, it just somehow triggered off a laugh, you know?
By the time Carry On Abroad was released in 1972, there was absolutely no attempt to conceal rude words whatsoever. Just ask this bloke.
I see. Well, I'm the representative of Wonder Tours, Stuart Farquhar.
Stupid what?
Stuart Farquhar.
I think he was right the first time.
As any Stuart Farquhar knows, Carry On characters have an unfortunate habit of losing their clothes. But surprisingly, the first ones to reveal all weren't the ladies.
Gentlemen, really?
But while there was a cheeky display from the boys in Carry On Constable, it was inevitably the women who ended up in next to nothing.
You rotten cow!
When Barbara Windsor and Margaret Nolan came to blows in Carry On Girls, the cast of the resulting fight scene had barely an outfit between them. Apart from the addition of a disgruntled donkey, this was nothing new for Babs, whose costumes in the Carry-Ons had regularly been, well, non-existent.
The scene in Carry On Again, Doctor, where she's a performer and she's come in with just pasties on her boobs and that tiny heart-shaped bikini, and the sheet is pulled off her.
No, nothing at all. It's all marvellous.
What happened to the rest of your clothes, Miss Locks?
Oh, this is all that I was wearing. I told you I was doing an advertisement.
Just for interest, what were you advertising?
Bristol's bouncing baby food.
I can see the connection.
And Jim Dale goes, whoa, and I just cannot believe what he's seeing. That's, in a weird way, the most disturbing moment for me, because we are seeing her almost like a piece of meat on a table.
Speaking in 1998, Barbara revealed just how true this was and how her attempt to feel confident wearing little more than a handful of sequins was dismissed.
I got very, very nervous and I dieted. Because just before that film, I was quite plump and I dieted. And I remember the first day of filming was that scene with the hearts. And there was a gag about Miss Bristol and all the rest of it. And Gerald, when I showed myself, like, he went, well, that's the gag about Bristol's out the window. What have you done to yourself? You know, like that.
But it wasn't always Barbara whose physical attributes came under uncomfortably close scrutiny. Amanda Barrie's costumes in Carry On Cleo are perhaps some of the most iconic and unforgiving in the Carry-Ons. But as she found out at a wardrobe fitting, her petite physique wasn't quite carry-on enough for the producers.
And he said, what are we going to have? We're going to have the little brassiere over the breast here, and the rest of the breast will be out the side. Well, I kept trying to say to him, we haven't got a lot to expose with me. We've only got there isn't anything to put round the side. This is me, darling. I was this very thin creature with nothing at all. And he went, oh, my God! And he rushed to the phone. And he was on the phone to the producers. And all I could hear were things like, no, we can't operate. There's no time to do that. We start film. And I stood there. I was so humiliated.
Astoundingly drastic action was taken to make Cleo's cups overflow.
They sent me to the hormone specialist in Harley Street, who Frank Sinatra used to go to. They all used to go to for little boosters to get their things up. And what with me, they were trying to get my things out, I think. And he said, I still think I can do. And I think he said to me, you are the nearest thing to a hermaphrodite I have ever seen. That didn't help. Doesn't fill you full of enthusiasm when you're playing Cleopatra.
Compared to the challenge of flying under the film censors' smut radar, getting away with saucy content on TV should have been easy. But this uncomfortably flirtatious encounter had viewers at home choking on their tea.
Say hello nicely to Father Christmas.
You little soul.
Well, I'm sorry, she doesn't mean it. She's only 13.
Get away.
Yes.
ITV's fourth annual Carry On Christmas was probably not the gift the nation's viewers were expecting.
You've got Sid James dressed up as Santa Claus, and you've got Barbara Windsor, who's then in her mid-30s, dressed as a schoolgirl.
What are you gonna give me?
Yeah, well, you're making it hard for me, but...
Inevitably, this incurred the wrath of television's most notorious moral guardian, Mary Whitehouse, who wasted no time in sending a strongly worded letter to the bigwigs at Thames Television.
Viewers who spoke to me found the programme highly offensive in its sexual innuendos and general attitudes. More than one mentioned the episode in which Barbara Windsor and Sid James made a joke of a 13-year-old girl having sex. Unfortunately, it seems to be accepted that the viewer will take anything so long as it's presented as humour. This is not at all so, and if this is the thinking behind such a production, perhaps it might be reconsidered from the point of view of what is responsible rather than what be thought funny.
After Carry On England, there was no return to the slap and tickle and double entendres of old. In fact, the next outing drifted even further into X-rated territory.
You're doing a spoof of a sex film, you know, having been warned by the BFBC that that's not what they want in a carry-on, really, and the audience doesn't want it. And Emmanuel didn't do well at all.
I will make you love me if it's the last thing I do.
I think she's knackered him.
There came a point where they should have said, we're not doing this anymore, because it is so far away from the fun, joyous carry-on films that we enjoyed making. The minute you have to expose your body parts to have the joke work, then that's the end of it.
Coming up, the secret off-screen lives of the stars.
She had a side on her which you wouldn't mess with, but of course, because she was married to who she was married to, she knew the craze.
And Kenneth Williams won't stop messing about.
It was a shock to have that done, even in the 60s.
Settle in. Simba Hybrid Mattress sponsors evenings on Channel 5.
I just sold my car.
When are you going to part exchange?
I was, but who knew you could get a better deal if you sell to We Buy Any Car? Just sold my car. Do we buy any car? Hey!
Just sold my car. Yeah! Do we buy any car? Just sold my car. Do we buy any car? Just sold my car.
Find out how much your car's worth in 30 seconds. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Join the 30 million investors around the world who value getting Vanguard value. Vanguard. Value to investors.
Pain. We talk about two sides. Pain you feel and relief. But what about the moment in between, when you start to be released from pain and get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing? Panadol Extra Advance. Powerful pain relief. Release starts here.
When you can buy by spook from a real person. Why buy boring? Shop Etsy.
Shop without online trackers following your every step. Get NordVPN now and avoid online trackers. NordVPN. Cybersecurity built for every day.
Gum problems can cause more problems. Like bad breath and sensitive teeth. Corsidil Gum Plus is scientifically proven to target gum problems to help protect your whole mouth. Corsidil Gum Plus, breath and sensitivity.
I keep my home fresh with Febreze Revolution plug-in. And I use this. Febreze has smart programming to digitally control how much scent is released, so you never stop noticing freshness for up to 90 days.
Oh, does mine have smart programming?
Oh. Febreze also has a refill reminder light.
It even reminds you to refill it?
So I never miss a day of freshness.
Wow, it's so fresh.
Upgrade to Febreze Revolution.
This is a 30-second ad. That's not long.
Get comfy. Simba Hybrid Mattress sponsors evenings on Channel 5.
It's 1973. The nation celebrates as the UK finally joins the European Economic Community. 90 million people watch Billie Jean King win the Battle of the Sexes. And on the set of Carry On Girls, things seem to be carrying on as usual, as a chuckling Sid James attempts to bed a giggling Barbara Windsor.
Leave it outside the door, please.
Didn't I want to talk to you?
But this time, something is different. In 1973, the pair had begun an affair. And unbeknownst to the audience or their co-stars, their on-set canoodling had taken on secret complications.
The two you should watch if you want to see the cracks. It's Carry On Girls and Carry On Dick.
Is this true?
Oh, I cannot tell a lie, sir. I have been a bad girl.
Well, it must stop right away. You hear?
Oh, but
stop.
sir, you see...
And you can see it in their chemistry. There's a little bit of grit has got in somehow, you know, particularly Carry On Dick.
As Barbara explained when she was interviewed for Sid's biography, before this film, it didn't bother me to do all that wiggling in front of Sid. But I had a scene where I had to seduce him and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't shake everything about in front of him. The change in our relationship had put a wall between us when it came to doing things like that in a scene. Sid and Barbara's first appearance together in 1967's Carry On Doctor had certainly sent Sid's pulse racing.
Hi.
But they had spent many years simply as great friends.
They were friends for a long, long time. They were always doing charity gigs together and appearing at first nights and premieres with other people, just good pals.
When they started seeing each other during the filming of Carry On Girls and then a Carry On stage show, even Barbara herself assumed it was just a one-night stand or two.
I knew Barbara Windsor very well. We were friends. I also know the James family very well. There's no doubt that there was affection there, there was feeling there, and Barbara felt quite strongly for Sid.
Their relationship became an open secret in the industry, but Sid and Barbara were both married, Barbara to East End gangster Ronnie Knight. And with Carry On Dick to film, Sid promised his wife that once the shoot was over, the affair would be too.
Being the consummate professionals they both were, they got through those 6-week shoots and delivered the funnies.
But then a new job sprung up, a 6-part Carry On television series, and their scenes must have felt awkwardly familiar.
Let us not speak of it, my dear. Now I am free to claim everything that is mine.
Oh, yes, well, I'm not stopping you.
Of course.
This time, Sid promised his wife that it would be over by the time he left for his theatre tour of Australia, and told Barbara that if he couldn't have her, he'd be dead within a year. And it was indeed just over a year after the ultimatum that Sid James died on stage in April 1976.
Sid was lovely. He was a true gentleman. I mean, you know, he had this reputation as a womanizer, but in fact, he looked after the ladies very well on the films. I think it's really sad because I think Sid actually really did love Barbara, but he loved his wife and his family as well. And so I'm sure he was very, very much torn.
In another unseen interview clip, the strength of Barbara's feelings for Sid are clear when she relates an incident from the year after his death.
I remember when they phoned me up to do the compilation of the big for the big screen, That's Carry On.
Ladies and gentlemen, from 28 films...
And God knows how many film stars...
That's Carry On!
They showed the first clip. And it was Sid. And he died the year before. And I had... Makes me sad. I had, same hairstyle. And I remember thinking, oh, my God, he's gone, and we didn't talk. Because we didn't talk in the end, you know. It was the only way I could stop this obsession with him. And Kenny looked at me and he went, what's wrong with you? And the tears were falling down my face. I said, he's not with us, you know. And there he was, laughing and that cackle. And he said, oh, being silly cow, what's wrong with you? I saw Sid and I ran out. And he was lovely. He came after me, he said, oh, Bar, I'm ever so sorry, I forgot how close you were with him. And he was sweet and lovely, and we had a cup of tea. And he said, now, come on, you silly old pro. You've got to get out there and do it. So I was mopped down and I started all over again.
Barbara's off-screen life, married to slightly dubious nightclub owner Ronnie Knight, was rather eye-opening to some of her castmates.
Barbara was a powerhouse, absolute powerhouse. She was always very sweet, quite formidable, though. She had a side on her which you wouldn't mess with. But of course, because she was married to who she was married to, she knew the craze. And one day she said to me, would you like to go to my husband's bar in the West End? I went, oh, yes. So we went up. And it was so exciting. So we got to the door, we knocked on the door 3 times. And this went, and this guy went, yes. I said, I'm Barbara Windsor's friend. Oh, all right, love. Opened the door, and inside was a bar. Ronnie was over in the corner, his hands like that on the table, with about 5 guys round him. He came over and said, all right, any friend of Barbara's, friend of mine. And he went, all the food you want, any drinks you want, you're all right, OK? You're all right with me. And so the guy comes over, he went, and he was really one of those typical kind of the nose and everything. And he went, all right, love. I went, yeah. He said, anybody disturbs you, and come to me. My name is Freddie the Frog. I went, thanks, Freddie. It was just the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me.
Barbara's closest friendship on the carry-ons was with Kenneth Williams, and it was sometimes a little too close.
When Barbara was married in the 60s and she told Kenneth that she was going on honeymoon, he invited himself, not just him, but his mother and his sister, and they all went to Madeira on Barbara's honeymoon. I mean, can you imagine that?
Kenneth could certainly be fun to be around. Here's a perhaps too revealing story from Carry On Behind. Sorry, Joan.
Joan and I sat in the caravan waiting. She said to me, I have to go for a wee. But I'm talking about the days when the caravans didn't have toilets. You know, there were toilet blocks that you go... I said, well, there's no toilet. She said, I know. She said, just pass me that polystyrene cup. And she picked her skirt up and she was having a wee. And Kenneth Williams walked in, completely ignored what she was doing and just went, no tea for me, thank you. And walked off outside.
Kenneth certainly knew how to make an entrance.
I remember we were doing on Henry, there was a sequence where Kenny was the other side of a door and it was knock, knock, and then somebody said, who's there? And then Kenny said,
I, Thomas Cromwell.
Cromwell, quickly. My Lord Chancellor.
I think we did it about 3 times, and it went knock, knock, and somebody says, "Who's there?" And Kenny says, "You bloody well know who it is. Open the door." And, of course, the whole crew went in laughter.
Mr. Williams could make being on set great fun for cast and crew alike. But we can reveal he was also prone to getting right on their nerves.
There's that story in Follow That Camel where he went up to Jim Dow just at the start of the shoot, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I think I should tell you that Peter Butterworth hates your guts."
I mean, one can't imagine someone as benign as Peter Butterworth hating anybody. And then he told Peter Butterworth, "Ooh, Jim hates you, you know."
I saw Peter, and Peter was looking at me with a slight... And I was looking back at him, and we didn't talk for about 3 or 4 days. And I avoided him in the canteen, and he seemed to be avoiding me. And finally, after about 3 or 4 days, I went over to him. I said, "Excuse me, Peter, has Kenneth Williams been saying anything to you about me?" He said, "He told me you hate my guts." I said, "But he told me you hate..." And there's Kenneth, 20 feet away, going, "Ha, ha, ha." Now, this is wicked. This is wicked. We nearly killed the little bugger. I mean, I chased him all over Pinewood Backlot.
Encountering Kenneth's wicked side became an occupational hazard. And after a day of filming Carry On at Your Convenience, fellow cast member Hugh Futcher was on the receiving end.
The subject came up of everyone's got a funny story. As the circle got nearer to me, I really was, if you like, tongue-tied in thinking, do I have a funny story? And I remembered something, so I did that. And the reaction to it was very favourable. Suddenly, Kenneth Williams got to his feet, came over towards me, and he pinched my cheek and said in that way of Kenneth's, "You will remember I'm the funny one, dear, won't you?" Squeezed my cheek and then left.
I just get out of my bath and slip into something a little more comfortable, if you don't mind.
A pinch on the cheek was pretty mild compared to the treatment Amanda Barrie got on the opulent but slightly soggy set of Carry On Cleo.
You were saying?
They called me and I got this dressing gown on. I got up to go onto the set. Kenneth came behind me and he ripped it off and went, "That's mine." I thought, but I haven't got names on them. This one was just put on me. And because I was left there stark naked, it gave me quite a shock, actually. And I think it was Sid that threw me another dressing gown. It was a shock to have that done, even in the 60s.
But, of course, Kenny was a rule unto his, unto himself, really, wasn't he? One way and another.
Kenneth was a tricky person, without a doubt. Because Kenneth didn't know who Kenneth was, I think that spilled out into real life.
Joan did say to me, Kenneth Williams is a genius, but he has lots of sides to him, and you have to know which side you're talking to. I just knew he was either grumpy, so you kept away, he was funny and outgoing, so you could all have a laugh, or he was very inward, and then you had to be very careful.
Kenneth Williams is one of the most fascinating characters, I think, in 20th century entertainment history. Here we have an introvert who makes his living from being an extrovert. You have one of the most famous comic figures of the second half of the 20th century, and yet you have a man who lives alone in a very Spartan flat, next door to his mother, usually, who lived opposite him.
Kenneth famously didn't like having people in his flat, particularly his loo. And in another unbroadcast interview clip, Joan Sims needs a wee again.
Hattie and I did bombard his flat one day. We were all in the same car going home. And we said, "We're coming to tea, Kenneth." And he said, "I'm not having anybody in my flat." So we said, "We're coming." And we went in. And, I mean, it was absolutely Spartan. You've never seen anything like it. It was and he wouldn't let us use the toilet. He just wouldn't. He said, "You're not going to my lavatory. No, you have to wait." And we had to wait, dear. He gave us a pot of tea, much against his wishes, and wouldn't let us use the lavatory. So when it came time to go into the powder room, we had to actually depart because only if it was somewhere to go.
Kenneth's privy might have been private during his lifetime, but following his death in 1988, his dearest friend Barbara Windsor was forced to invade his smallest room, all in the name of posterity.
In 1994, when we put up a blue plaque remembering Kenneth Williams at his actual flat in London, she said, yeah, I'll unveil it. And we got Norman Wisdom to unveil it with her. What you don't see is how they managed to look out of the window so you could take the shot downstairs with the plaque. Because of all the places that they had to lean out the window, it was Kenneth Williams' bathroom. And I'll never forget, there's Barbara Windsor saying, well, how am I going to do this? So she climbed onto the bath, put one leg on the bath. She said, Morris, she said, hold my bum. So I'm going, oh, right. It was the first time I actually met her. So I had one hand on Barbara Windsor's bum, and Norman Wisdom was standing on the toilet and leaning over, and another hand on Norman Wisdom, another hero of mine. I thought, life is never going to get better than this for me. And you know what? It never has.
Coming up, the revolving door of the Carry On casting department.
If Sid James wasn't available, they brought in super subs like Harry H. Corbett or something. If Kenneth Williams wasn't available, they brought in Frankie Howerd.
And the secret life of Charles Hawtrey.
He collapsed, he just fainted. And, of course, he had had too much to drink.
New Citroën EC4X Electric. Nothing moves us like Citroën.
Hey, Doc, what can a Newman Fear Nothing blood test really test?
Kidney, liver, thyroid, heart, and more.
So it can know a man's body, but can it know his mind? No. Interesting. Order your Fear Nothing blood test at Newman.com. What do you get if we don't find any abnormal results in your Newman blood test? A full refund. Monitor your health with a Fear Nothing blood test.
Relaxing nights in start here. Simba Hybrid Mattress sponsors evenings on Channel 5.
It's 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis has put the planet on the brink of nuclear Armageddon. The world's first public hover bus service launches in Rhyl. And setting sail at Pinewood Studios is Carry On Cruising, with familiar face Charles Hawtrey on board to play the ship's cook.
Doctor,
Hang on, that's definitely not Charles Hawtrey.
Very nice.
In fact, Hawtrey had been replaced in the role by fresh-faced young comedian Lance Percival. But why?
Charlie, of course, he was an extraordinary man, and he had the most wonderful career when he was young.
He'd started off with a very young Alfred Hitchcock, Errol Flynn, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Vivian Leigh.
Worked with Will Hay, who was probably the most famous star of the 1930s. He also worked with George Formby, who was one of the most popular film comedians of his day.
Anyone can see the external. We look deep inside a man. We see his soul, his thoughts, his fears, and his worries.
Worries? Well, that lot inside him is entitled to have worries.
But as the Carry-Ons grew in popularity, Hawtrey was never seen as the film's biggest name and would always be billed below Sid James and Kenneth Williams.
Sid and Kenneth were both on 5, and next was Charles with about £2,000 a film.
By the time it came to Carry On Cruising, Charles Hawtrey decided he deserved a bit more money, better billing, and brilliantly, a star on his dressing room door, the total legend.
You know, Peter Rogers couldn't let any actor be that important and that big that they called the shots, because that way leads to anarchy. You know, when the inmates take over the asylum, that's the end of it, really.
Charles tried it on. He asked for more money, star on his dressing room door, better billing, and they said, nah, you're all right, Charles, we'll use Lance Percival. We're fine. And they did.
By the way, this wasn't the first time a Carry On star had been replaced by someone who bore absolutely no resemblance to the original actor. Carry On Up the Jungle had been supposed to star heartthrob Jim Dale as Ugg, but for some reason he found the script uninspiring, so the loincloth was passed to the rather less swoon-worthy Terry Scott. Ooh, hope they washed it.
You don't have to tell everybody.
Here, night time.
When Sid James was too busy to play the lead in Carry On Screaming, his last-minute replacement was the at least vaguely similar Harry H. Corbett.
I mean, the character's called Sidney Bung. It's written for Sid James, right? But it's still a brilliant Carry On film.
Oh, you don't want to bother about the cases. Slow button. You want to learn to relax more. Take things as they come. That's what gets results.
It was rep company. It was a rep company on screen. If Sid James wasn't available or didn't want to do it, they brought in super subs like Harry H. Corbett or something. If Kenneth Williams wasn't available, they brought in Frankie Howerd. You know, there was always somebody to plug the gaps.
But these guest stars didn't just take the coveted top billing from the regulars. When Phil Silvers joined the cast of Follow That Camel in a bid to popularise the Carry-Ons in America, he not only topped the bill, but made the salaries of the regular cast look like small change.
So you're
No irony was intended in this clip.
Oh, sir, this isn't necessary. I have enough medals. It is a proud moment just to serve for you, sir. I don't... Oh, there's a goodie. Yes, this one here. Solid silver. Splendid. Thank you, sir.
For this appearance, Phil Silvers received a staggering £30,000 plus generous perks, in comparison to his co-stars, most of whom never earned more than £5,000. So the cast members were in and out like nobody's business. And after being dropped from cruising, Charles Hawtrey was quickly back in the fold for Carry On Cabby and Carry On Jack, but he was soon proving a thorn in the production's side for another reason.
Charles Hawtrey always liked to drink, but it was less noticeable, obviously, in the early films.
By Carry On Spying, Hawtrey's drinking was affecting his ability to play some of the more physically demanding scenes.
It's Kenneth Williams, Barbara Windsor in her very first Carry On, Bernie Cribbins and Charles Hawtrey, these four sort of British agents. And they're all on this sort of weird contraption going through and losing their clothes, as only Carry-Ons would do, and being squirted with sort of white toothpaste or all sorts of nonsense going on.
It was quite a physical scene to do, and Charlie Hawtrey was not a young man then, and he collapsed, he just fainted. And, of course, he had had too much to drink.
Hawtrey's drinking was possibly the reason he was dropped again for the following year's Carry On Screaming. But Peter Rogers was forced to make a U-turn. Or was it a U-bend?
A journalist had written an article saying, oh, it's going to be such a shame, you know, a Carry-On film, Carry On Screaming, without Charles Hawtrey.
Peter Rogers, on hearing this, thinks, well, no, we can't have this happen, especially because it's a trade publication, and everyone in the film industry will read this. Anyway, they put him in as Dan the lavatory man.
Oh, you're the young fellow who's with that girl, aren't you?
Yes. What do you know about it?
Plenty, but it'll cost you a bit.
All right, all right. There'll be quite enough of that sort of talk.
Yeah, what do you think you're doing? Who are you pushing?
I'm a police detective, and I must warn you that I shall take down anything you say.
All right. Trousers.
He was only in it for 2 scenes, but he lit up the screen in just those 2 scenes.
By this stage, sadly, Charles Hawtrey was a confirmed chronic alcoholic. He'd found it difficult to perform for many years.
The drinking was getting worse and worse, and you look at those last few films, particularly his last film, Carry On Abroad, he's always swigging out of a bottle somewhere, even out of suntan lotion he's swigging, you know. It's part of the script.
They had to give him a role that involved alcohol to explain away his slurring and his drunkenness.
Carry On Abroad was Hawtrey's last Carry On film, but it was another argument over billing, this time for the 1972 Christmas TV special that spelled the end of Hawtrey's Carry On career.
Because they had other things going on, Sid and Kenneth weren't going to be in this TV special. By default, Hawtrey should have leapfrogged into first billing. But because it was a TV special, they wanted Hattie Jakes. who was a greater name at this point on television. Hawtrey couldn't bear the idea of Hattie going on top and refused to do it.
And Gerald said, look, I'm pleading with you. Please, Charles, accept second billing and we can carry on as normal.
And he said, just remind me, Sid's not doing it? No. Kenneth's not doing it? No. Well, there we go. I get top billing. And he said, no, it's Hattie. She's a big star on Thames. He said, no, don't want to do it. And Gerald said on the phone, look, this is it now. You've got to tell us, yes or no. Are you going to do this? And he said no, and put the phone down.
I think it wouldn't have hurt Peter Rogers to give him top billing just that once. But Peter Rogers, that was the bottom line. He had had enough of Charlie by then.
Coming up, more unseen interviews reveal the dark heart of Carry On.
You're going through a bad time, and you think, my God, where's the next bit of money coming from? Where's the next rent going to be paid?
And will Peter Rogers change his ways?
I got a phone call from Peter saying, oh, Maurice, I'd like you to come in and sign something for me. He says, I want you to witness my will.
I found you. I can get rid of any one of you.
You've isolated yourself. Arrest me. Do your job. This isn't how it ends.
The new season of NCIS, coming soon on 5 USA and My5.
It's pretty clear you don't like me, Ed, but I've fallen for your daughter.
There's just something about him.
Jason Watkins stars in a brand new drama, The Catch. Watch the full series now on My5.
Simba Hybrid Mattress sponsors evenings on Channel 5.
It's 1984. The Provisional IRA fails in its attempt to assassinate Margaret Thatcher in the Brighton hotel bombing.
It was an attack that struck at the very heart of the establishment.
Britain's top musicians release a charity single in aid of Ethiopia. And 8 years after the end of the Carry On films, one of their stars is about to hit the papers again, and not for the right reasons.
4 years before he died in 1988, Charles Hawtrey had a fire at his house in Deal, and it was a particularly ferocious fire.
So Charles Hawtrey made a dash for it. He was absolutely naked, and someone found a blanket and wrapped it around him. And of course, he didn't have his toupee, which he hated being caught without his toupee. And someone took a photograph. The next day, it was, front page news.
According to Charles's friends, the fire was deliberate. It was by a young man who had spent the night with Charles, had demanded payment, but he refused to pay, and so this young man set fire to his sofa.
We've already revealed a bit about the cast's anger at not getting a share of the film's enormous profits over the years. But there was more to this than just griping. After the Carry On films stopped being made, times were hard for some of the cast. Perhaps most shockingly, in the case of Charles Hawtrey.
The only thing he had, really, once the Carry Ons had finished, were these really cheap seaside pantomimes, paying £250 a week. Nothing. He did a few things on the radio, but in the last decade and a half of his life, he had that and nothing else. No other work. What was there left for him to do but drink? And so he drank.
The unseen interview clips which we've uncovered reveal that the cast members felt very strongly about the total lack of support offered to those who needed it.
The fact that all the millions and millions and millions of pounds that have been made from the Carry On films since television came in, not one penny has in any shape or form gone to some sort of fund, a fund that could help out those aging technicians, those aging actors and actresses. Somewhere along the line, it would be nice if somebody said, hey, I've made enough money out of you guys to give you a few bob back to help you in your old age.
And dear Charlie, at the end, he wanted to buy his bottle of sherry and then run down to the end of the docks and wave to some pretty sailor going by. That made him happy. But suddenly, because of these carry-ons being so successful, he was being recognised. He couldn't do what he wanted to do, do you know what I mean? And I remember him saying to me, and I can't afford to send fan mail, but I ain't got the money anymore.
He was badly treated by Peter Rogers and the production team. I think he was. And he wasn't the only one.
Joan Sims certainly needed money. Those films would be on TV all the time and she wouldn't get any residuals. And it was awful. I knew Joan really well, and I was actually working with her at that time.
And in her latter years, she had a period of ill health, so she couldn't work as much. And Joan found herself in a position where she didn't have much money. She was on her own. She was living in a church flat where her rent was assisted.
I don't just speak for me. I feel we all contributed a great deal to the entertainment industry. And the fact that sometimes, you know, because of one reason or another, you're going through a bad time and you think, my God, where's the next bit of money coming from? Where's the next rent going to be paid? When you're a bit on your uppers, I think you'd be a very unreal person if you didn't feel slight bitterness.
I always remember meeting Liz Fraser at some charity function, and she said she'd never talk to Peter Rogers again. And I said, well, why not? And she said, well, when Joan was ill and before she died, I went to him because she had no money to see if he would, you know, contribute to her health bills and everything. And he wouldn't. And I think that's unbelievably awful. Really.
Those films are loved for their performances, and yet it really matters that they did not get paid properly and they never see any of the profits of these films when they're repeated. I think that's a very dark heart of the carry-on genre, isn't it? That these actors were so exploited.
In later years, though sadly too late for the likes of Charles Hawtrey, Joan Sims and countless others, Peter Rogers did try to do right by the carry-on team.
I got a phone call from Peter saying, oh, Maurice, I'd like you to come and sign something for me. He says, I want you to witness my will. I think he began to realise that, in fairness, he should have done something more for some of them. And it ended up going to one of the great entertainment charities that looks after actors who've fallen on hard times.
I find Peter Rogers to be an exploitative profiteer when it comes to the cast. Because commendable though it was for him to leave the carry-on royalties to charity, fantastic. But during his lifetime, there were charity cases all around him. Who could have done with that money then?
In one more unseen interview from before his late burst of generosity, Peter Rogers had this to say.
They did the deal with the agent, and the agent did the deal with me, and that's that. I don't see why I should go back and say, oh, I feel terribly sorry for you. Have this as £5,000. Never paid enough.
Peter Rogers' attitude to his cast was shockingly cold, but his commitment to the carry-on name was enduring.
Peter Rogers never gave up. He thought that by tapping into what was in the national psyche at the time, particularly on television, that might be the way forward. And so, for example, there was the big hit that was Dallas at the time, J.R. Ewing, Bobby Ewing, all that kind of stuff. And there was they wrote a script called Carry On Dallas. I've got a copy of it here. Carry On Dallas, characters. So instead of J.R. Ewing, we've got R.U. Ramming, Fireball Groin, Orson Upshaft, Theo Clapp, and so they go on. Can't think why this was never made.
Other ideas Peter Rogers tried to get away in the 1980s included cashing in on the popularity of Neighbours with Carry On Down Under, and a return to the medical arena with Carry On Again Nurse, which got so close to being made that Gerald Thomas, Bernard Bresslaw and Jack Douglas went on TV to do their best to promote it to this insultingly incredulous interviewer.
I mean, why on earth bring them back after 10 years? I mean, they were magic at the time, but haven't things rather moved on?
Well, they have, but really we're bringing them back more or less by public demand. We've had an enormous amount of pressure and correspondence in the last 6 months.
But are they still going to be the same? Is it still going to be sort of tits and bums and innuendos? And...
yes, maybe bums and tits instead, but it's going to be the same, yes.
There was one last hurrah in 1992 with Carry On Columbus, though it didn't quite capture the original Carry On magic.
I've been counting the ship's crew. There seem to be several men missing. Missing? Yes. Where, for example, is the shipwright?
He's aloft.
And what's he doing?
He's shortening the spritsail yard.
And the sailmaker?
Oh, he's aloft as well.
Doing what?
He's sewing up the slash in the spritsail that the shipwright made with his saw while he was shortening the spritsail yard.
You know, Richard Wilson, Maureen Lipman, Bernard Cribbins, Rick Mail. But nobody, not even Jim Dale, could save Carry On Columbus.
Apart from the occasional blip, the Carry-Ons are a distinctly British institution. And though they may be dated, we'll carry on enjoying them for years to come.
There are some great gags in them, there's great slapstick. You can enjoy all those moments, so there's something childlike about these films, even though they're supposed to be about sex.
They just spun gold out of nothing, those people. To get such a brilliant cast of actors and a brilliant team of technical people, it was just, you know, some sort of alchemy happened there.
No way would anybody have thought the Carry-Ons would have lasted. Not at all. And yet people do still enjoy them, don't they? I think.
Jane Seymour's turning detective in our brand new murder mystery on Channel 5. Harry Wilde Investigates starts next Saturday at 8. And tonight, from Mark Ruffalo's plot spoiler to a stunt disaster for Tom Cruise. When classic films go horribly wrong is brand new next.